It's time. These are my top 10 whiskeys of 2024. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch, and thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. What a year it has been. 2024 has been an awesome year for the Bourbon Hutch, for my own personal whiskey journey, and I think there's been a lot of great whiskey that's been released this year, and it's a privilege to get to talk about it and share my thoughts with all of you. So first and foremost, I just want to say a big thank you to all of you who have been watching throughout 2024, and maybe even before that. I really appreciate your support of the channel. Could not do this without you. I appreciate all of your feedback, all the comments that you guys have. You guys are what makes this all worthwhile. Okay, so as we get into talking about the top 10 whiskeys of 2024, in my opinion, I do want to say a couple of things. 3 things. 1, this is my list and it's completely subjective. I didn't get everything from the entire year. There's a lot I don't get to taste, so a lot will be left off. But from what I did taste and what I was able to get my hands on, these are my top picks. 2, we're actually going to talk about 16 whiskeys. So I've got a slate of honorable mentions to go over. Why? Not only do I think there were some worthy whiskeys that need to be mentioned that didn't make the top 10 list, but 2, we're ultimately going to talk about all 16 whiskeys as we approach the end of the year and even beyond, because we're going to do a full Sweet 16 bracket. Basically a little mini tournament of blind challenges to see what comes out as the actual definitive best whiskey of 2024. I love getting to do blinds. What better time to do it than the end of the year to figure out what really was my favorite whiskey. And then number 3, I want to specify that this list is in price order. So I ordered it by what amount of money I had to pay to get each bottle. It is not yet in my definitive ranking order. So number 1 isn't necessarily the best whiskey, right? So that's going to be discovered by the bracket challenge. This is just my list ordered by price, if that makes sense. All right, without further ado, let's get into it with our 6 honorable mentions. Honorable mention number 1 is the most affordable option on the list and just a stellar addition to the budget category. That is Green River Full Proof, 117.3 proof, $45, and a beautiful Honey Nut Cheerios, brown sugar spice. Green River knocked it out of the park with this one. Okay, so bottle number 2 in the honorable mention category is New Riff 8-year-old bourbon. So this is quintessential bourbon to me. For around $65, you're going to get big, good oak, brown sugar, and cherry. Just a really well-rounded bourbon from New Riff. As their stocks continue to get older, I become more and more impressed. They did a great job with this relatively affordable option. Our 3rd honorable mention is one that caused a little bit of a stir when it came out, and for good reason, and that is James E. Pepper Barrel Proof. So while technically this may have come out in December of 2023, I really consider it a 2024 release. That's when most people could get it. It's got this white grape, peachy, spicy quality from a craft distillery for around $65. Wonderful decanter presentation. It's hard to beat as a gift, and it's hard to beat as one that you should add to your collection that's just going to ramp up in terms of the value and uniqueness that you have in your collection. So number 4 for honorable mentions is kind of an interesting one for me. That is Larceny Barrel Proof Batch C924. Typically, Larceny ends up as one of my top whiskeys of the year. It's in the honorable mention category this year. I didn't feel like Larceny had a particular standout batch this year, though in my blind, this did win, and I am fascinated to see how it's going to turn up in the whole 16 bracket, because I know how powerful this stuff can be. As it continues to open up, it could really impress me. So keep an eye out for this to be kind of a sleeper pick. Low seed, but high potential, if that's fair to say about this bottle of bourbon. So coming up next, number 5 in our honorable mentions is from a blender that I have come to respect a ton, and that is Barrel Batch 36. This is full of citrus notes, really interesting vanilla, cool blend of all different things for around 80 to 90 bucks. These batches from Barrel continue to be some of the best, guaranteed, really good value in bourbon. You know you're going to get something great with good age on it from Barrel. And last but not least on our list of these 6 honorable mentions to round out getting to 16 whiskeys, we've got Little Book, Chapter 8, The Path Not Taken. So this is a blend of all different ryes, mostly. There's one bourbon in here, some pretty well-aged stuff, but probably in minimal quantities here. A very flavorful and impactful rye. Again, this is another one where I'm interested to see how it slates among all of the 16 whiskeys. I think it has a really good shot to punch above its weight class. I think in terms of price point, which is around $150-ish, it might not add up quality ratio-wise as much as I'd like, but it's still very, very good, and we'll see how it turns out. Okay, so that covers our honorable mentions. I'll move these off the table, and we will get into our definitive top 10 whiskeys from 2024. So as a reminder, these top 10 whiskeys are in order of price, lowest to highest. All of them truly are wonderful whiskeys. I'm so glad to have them. And if you've gotten your hands on any of them, I hope you're enjoying them as much as I am. Let's start out the list. Bottle number 1 is Stag Batch 24B. So this is the first Stag I've ever gotten my hands on. It's one of the newest additions to my collection, but as soon as I sipped on it, I knew it belonged in the top 10 whiskeys of the year, and I think this has a good chance to do some wonderful things in our bracket. So full of cherry cola and wonderful oak. Really, really interesting profile at full force. Moving right along, bottle number 2 was a big surprise this year. That is Elijah Craig Barrel Proof Batch A 124. So why so surprising? Well, I would have put money on the B batch from Elijah Craig this year, but I did my blind of all 3 batches, and A was the most interesting and the most delicious. Huge honey presence on this one. Younger for Elijah Craig's profile, but truly delicious. And I think it goes to show when they got rid of the age statement, maybe they didn't necessarily do us a disservice. We'll have to see how this one stacks up against all the rest. Okay, so now we move on to bottle number 3. This one is a little bit controversial. Old Forester 1924. So, huge waves in the whiskey world early this year when this was released. It's $115, which is almost double what all the other Whiskey Row products are, and it supposedly belongs right alongside them. It's 10 years old though, so steps up in age quite a bit. 100 proof, I think a lot of people wanted it to be higher proof. But ultimately, the more I come back to this one, the better it seems to get, and the more I kind of crave this profile. I think it's actually really, really good whiskey. All else aside, pricing, where it falls in its own lineup, put that all aside. The whiskey in the glass is very, very good, and I'm excited to see how it stands up. All right, we're moving into the meat of the list. This next bottle, bottle number 4, has kind of a smaller cult following, but I've come to love it, and that is Bomberger's 2024. This bottle in particular uses some malted grains in the mash bill. It's Michter's more experimental kind of line, along with Schenk's. At 108 proof, this has tons of layers and a really nice oak to this bottle in particular. So I think they use chinkapin oak as part of the aging process here, and I think that really comes through. So really, really nice release. Definitely beat out some other interesting whiskeys as I kind of tasted through the year. And I think this one is like a pretty solid representation of Michter's blending, some great stuff. And for $100, I think, and 20 or $130, one of the more interesting whiskeys I've sipped on this year. Okay, so bottle number 5 starts to get us into those more expensive whiskeys, but this one is a powerhouse of value and findability. That is Bardstown Discovery Series number 12. What a bottle, what a blend. It's got 14-year-old whiskey in here, which is probably from Wild Turkey, and it is peanut buttery, it is complex, while the Discovery Series 11 was so flavorful and almost an easy sipper for what it was. It's just really, really good. Discovery Series 12 is the more complex blend and keeps you interested and keeps you on your toes. In terms of value, findability, and quality of the whiskey, this might be one of the best of the entire year, bar none. Okay, bottle number 6 here for our whiskey of the year in 2024 is now starting to establish itself as a line. It's interesting to see which one people choose among the options so far. That is Maker's Mark Cellar Aged 2024. So this is becoming kind of a unicorn bottle status for a lot of people. Maker's Mark's most special release. They stepped it up in age this year. It's 12 and 13-year-old whiskey blended in here. Compared to 2023, I think this is a little bit more aggressive, but has a really wonderful toasted sugar core to it. Sweet, powerful, and I think worth the $175 that the MSRP is labeled at. It's special whiskey, and Maker's Mark has heard the cries of the people and given us this older stuff, and it's delicious. All right, bottle number 7 comes from a brand and a particular offering. You won't be surprised if you've been following the channel. This is some of my favorite stuff. Michter's 10-year rye 2024. 2023, I think, came in second in my whiskey of the year bracket. Absolutely phenomenal, especially for a low proof option. 2024 continues the trend. It's really, really good. This is all creme brulee, and for $200, this is some of the most consistently excellent whiskey that I have tasted, and write me down to continue chasing these 10-year rye releases from Michter's and the bourbon, but the rye especially is right up my alley. Phenomenal dessert forward whiskey. All right, so we made a little more room here for our last 3 bottles. Here is where we start to step into that territory of some of the stuff that's got to be the most special that I've ever been able to get my hands on, and I'm just so grateful that these bottles are part of the conversation this year and that I've been able to sip on them and start to share them. So first of that category is Four Roses Limited Edition 2024. So I've heard some people say that this isn't necessarily their favorite limited edition from Four Roses ever, but let me tell you, it's got some super aged notes on there. Tobacco for days, leather, and big berry notes. Four Roses is one of my favorites when I'm looking for a fruity profile, and this delivers it. There's even a little tropical flair in here. If you're looking for something fascinating that's going to keep you on your toes, Four Roses limited edition here in 2024 fit the bill. It's $220. I feel like it justifies that, kind of hits even on its value, but it's a phenomenal whiskey. It's going to be really interesting to see how it stacks up just because it's so complex. I wonder how that'll stand up in our big bracket and our big blind. Okay, so these last 2 bottles on our list are truly kind of monsters. Like, these might be contenders for some of the best whiskey of the last 5 years. I started my journey about 4 years ago. Of everything I've ever tasted, these stand out as truly spectacular. Hopefully they do well in the blind because I'm hyping them up, but let's start out with one of the most special things I've ever been able to purchase, and that is Old Fitzgerald, very, very special 13-year-old release. This is the 25th anniversary celebration bottle from Heaven Hill, commemorating them purchasing up the Old Fitzgerald lineup. They took 13-year-old whiskey that was distilled in 1999. They paused its aging because it was so good and said, we need to keep this until something special comes along. Kept it in a vat for like 12 years and then released it this year. Distillery only. I did get my bottle at the Bardstown Bourbon Festival, so very, very limited chances to grab this one, but truly spectacular and has a dusty whiskey kind of essence to it that is fascinating. The oak on this is something kind of unlike anything I've ever tasted, and it's just delicious. And last but not least, we've got our most expensive whiskey that I bought this year, but also maybe the best thing I've ever tasted, which is Russell's Reserve 15. By golly, if there is a more well-rounded, aged presentation of great bourbon, I don't know if I've tasted it. I think Russell's 15 at around 117 proof, that 15 years of age comes through oak, brown sugar, the mouthfeel is great, and it's just so well balanced. It's not over oaked, and it just kind of washes over your palate with an array of flavors, but the sweetness and the sugary nature of it, hard to ignore. It's just spectacular. I am so appreciative and so grateful that I was able to get a bottle of it. I've shared it with a couple of friends, and they agree it's some of the best stuff they've ever tasted. All right, everybody. That is the top 10 whiskeys that I've been able to grab or experience and own this year in 2024. We've got our 6 honorable mentions that'll be part of the bigger conversation, our Sweet 16 bracket, to narrow down to the very best bourbon of 2024 as dictated by my blind. It's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you join us for the rest of the series. But this year, these were the 10 that stood out to me as truly some of the best whiskey from 2024. Again, I would love to hear in the comments below, what makes your list? Do you disagree with any here? Do you find yourself gravitating toward other types of bottles? Would love to know what your personal favorites are this year. And again, I do want to say a big thanks to all of you who watch. You give me the motivation to continue doing the hunting. I love this hobby. I love getting to share with you guys. I love getting to explore more of the world of whiskey. And I'm just so happy that you've joined me for the journey. So thank you again for a great 2024. These were some spectacular whiskeys. I think it was a great year for bourbon, and it was certainly a great year for the Bourbon Hutch. So thank you again. Till I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.